Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Let us now begin with our session, and our session is going to focus on student engagement, and that is with a special focus to virtual teaching, and we are basically looking at the discipline science. We are going to look at a lot of activities and a lot of strategies that are there in teaching science virtually. However, if you feel that you want to adapt those activities into other disciplines, feel free to do so. Adapt them, um, use them as it is if applicable, but feel free to make use of all that is going to be shared in this session in your teaching learning to make it benefit your learners. Let's start with an ice-breaking activity. And in this ice-breaking activity, I want you all to think of a number between 0 to virtual teaching. 0 being the number with the least amount of stress, and virtual teaching being the highest amount of stress. You have to put down a number in the chat box, which actually tells me how stressed are you, and you have to mention the reason why. There'll be a 6-second lag in my transmission to reach you. So if you're going to type your responses, there'll be a 6-second lag as well. So one more thing that I wanted to share with you all was that you may not be able to see the responses of others. However, I can see the responses of all the participants coming on my interface. So I can see the responses flowing in. So there are lots of people who are saying 0 because you had no virtual teaching today and you're just attending this session, which is such a relief. Wonderful. Some of you are saying that your stress level is virtual teaching because you've been doing that a while ago and you just got a little break and you have to continue with some virtual teaching after the session. All right. So a lot of people are saying 5, 6, some 8s, and some 9s as well. All right, wonderful. So one thing that is very obvious is that there is a lot of stress. A lot of stress because maybe we were not trained to do this and it suddenly impacted us. We had limited resources, limited trainings. We're still discovering different sorts of programs, interfaces, opportunities, and we have to unlearn and relearn a lot of things. So yes, it does cause a lot of stress. The other thing that is very, very evident is that there are lots and lots of teachers who are still doing both sorts of teaching. So they're doing virtual teaching and they're doing face-to-face teaching as well. Though thanks to the government of Pakistan, we're all back to online teaching. However, there are some people who've joined in from other countries and they are still doing both things together. So yes, I agree with you all that we all are kind of headless chickens at the moment. And we're trying to be the best at whatever we're doing. But we are going to now focus on some hands-on activities that we can all do to make our teaching learning the best learning experience for our students virtually. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to stop stressing about virtual teaching, and we should just continue to stress about the virus. So let's promise ourselves to not stress anymore. If you're attentive throughout this session and if you go through all the strategies, I'm sure you will have a lesser stress level because you will have actually more than a handful of strategies to help you with your teaching. Let's look at the session outcomes. So I just have 3 outcomes for you all. And the 3 of them are, I'm going to read them for you. The first one being that exploring the idea of teaching science virtually, what are things that we can do? And these things are kind of free of cost. And you can just explore the idea, do those activities with your children and make learning a lot more engaging and a lot more collaborative for the children. Then the other thing is that we should not at all forget the fact that every discipline is basically taught for the particular skill. And with science also, we have to teach that particular discipline to um, get the outcomes of the students in terms of the skills that we have to see from the uh, within the children, so that they are actually um, gaining what is required from teaching that subject. And the last outcome is focusing on how to assess in a manner that we remain safe from the virus, and we have a way in which we actually manage to look at student learning and how is it progressing. It may not be the paper pencil test, it may not be those traditional approaches to assessment, but however, I will let you know, and when we go through the slides further, you will understand that the change in assessments must come through, and we need to modify our assessment practices. Let us look at what virtual classrooms are. Now, virtual classrooms are a term that is something that is not agreed by some educators because they think that the right term to be used is virtual learning spaces, because we've moved out from the boundary of a classroom. Right, so whatever you may wish to call it, a virtual classroom is basically a learning space where there is a lot of interaction between um, two stakeholders, that is the learner as well as the facilitator. Now, this sort of teaching that goes on in a virtual space is not at all traditional. It depends on how the teacher uses that space. So initially, when we had all moved in together to the virtual teaching mechanism, we were trying to explore this particular way of teaching, and we were very traditional in our approach. However, we very quickly moved by adapting a lot of activities and a lot of strategies by making virtual teaching very, very engaging, and um, making our learners more active in the spaces. Global skills are the theme of our symposium. However, the framework of global skills is made up of 5 sets of skills. The first one being communication and collaboration. In communication, you use your language effectively to coordinate and um, connect with other people. Collaboration goes hand in hand with communication because you require communication to collaborate. And in collaboration, you work together with a set of other people towards a common goal. Creativity involves flexible thinking to solve different sort of problems and to simplify solutions. Critical thinking, on the other hand, goes hand in hand with creativity because it involves out of the box thinking. Intercultural competence and citizenship involves and covers the social and interpersonal skills that are required to manage cross cultural encounters in respectful and appropriate and sensitive ways. Um, then we have digital uh, illiteracies. Digital literacies encompasses the individual, technological, and social skills that are required to effectively navigate one's way through a growing and ever-changing range of digital communication channels. The last one is emotional self-regulation and well-being, which means to basically recognize, identify, and understand one's own emotions and their functions. It also includes an awareness of regulation strategies for managing emotions appropriately, and it is a basis of one's own well-being. One of the things that we must avoid is death by PowerPoint. Death by PowerPoint is an overdose of PowerPoint, and we should ensure that there are already enough deaths happening across the world that we aren't the reason of any more deaths. So, as the name itself implies, it means that you are doing something wrong, and that is terribly wrong when you are using PowerPoint. So I've seen a lot of people make their uh, slides really text heavy, and they are unable to go through the slides nicely. They just read through the text, and which actually makes your learner really passive. So what you need to try to do is you need to remember the KISS rule. The KISS rule is called keep it simple. Now, how simple are you supposed to keep it? And that is defined by the 166 rule, which clearly mentions that on each slide you must have just one point, and on that one point you need to have 6 sub points, and in those 6 sub points you need to write down only 6 words that represent that particular point. Hence it becomes 166. So that is the amount of text that should be on your presentations for you to talk through those particular points and engage your learners. Let's have a look at synchronous strategies which happen at the same time in the classroom, in which you can make use of spiderweb discussions. Spiderweb discussions are as such in which you align children in a manner in which they know that who has to go after whom, and they keep continuing the discussion while you can do some other activities, like you can put up your PowerPoint presentation. This way you make use of time and the children are engaged. The other one is using chat to check for understanding. So in order to keep your children engaged, you have to make certain different types of instructions, that show me a thumbs up if you've understood everything, show me a thumbs down if you've missed out on something. So that way you can see who are the ones who are engaged and who are the ones who are not engaged. If you keep using your chat box and if you keep asking questions, that way your children will remain engaged for a longer time. The third strategy is flip your classroom to stimulate deeper discussion. In this strategy, you can try to give certain videos to be watched before the commencement of the class. That way you can save some time and you can assign some pre-work to the children, and when the children come to the class, then you can have a lot of deeper discussion, because the children are prepared with that topic and they have an understanding of it. So that way you can build up one level while they are discussing the topic, and you can lead the discussion. The next one is adapting think, pair, share to virtual classroom. So you can adapt it the way you feel like, the way you want to, but one of the most common ways of doing this is think, pair, write, think, pair, sing, anything that you can think of, and you can be as creative as possible. The next one is a new twist on show and tell. So show and tell is also a very exciting activity that you could do, and it involves that the child has to enable the video and then show something and tell things about it. So that is one thing that you can do. Further on, let's have a look at the asynchronous strategies, in which you create an online forum in which there is back and forth dialogue, so the children are engaged in critiquing each other's work, talking to each other, responding to each other's work. Then we have a lot of peer work in which the children display their work through virtual gallery walks. They can put up their concept maps, they can put up their artwork, they can put up their posters, and everyone can critique and they can praise each other's work. Then also we can have moving station, which are brainstorming online. We can develop small groups in which children have to list down things that come to their mind when they think about a particular topic, and then they bring all that learning, or sometimes even that some sort of research that they've done through the brainstorming sessions to the main classroom that you are going to facilitate. Planning a virtual field trip is really exciting and one of the most ingenious thing that you can do for your virtual classrooms. So though you don't really go and visit civilizations in your science classroom, that is something that you can do in other classrooms. However, there are different things that you can always observe through virtual field trips. Make this entire thing really exciting by asking your children to develop their own passports, develop their own covers of their passports, make a form in which you are going to ask the children to submit that form so that they have an experience of the process of how to visit a particular place. So make it look like a visa application in which you select and reject these applications and have a very strict criteria for it. So you can have a criteria in which you ask the children that, you know, you're only eligible for this virtual field trip if you have 75% of attendance and you're very active in your classrooms and you have submitted all your tasks, etc., etc. So make sure that you have a particular criteria and you make it really exciting for the children. The other thing is, if you plan a virtual field trip, have a look on the different opportunities that are being provided online. There is like a lot of spaces offering these virtual field trips that are free of cost. I recently did a virtual trip of the Great Wall of China very recently, and there are lots and lots of other opportunities available online as well. So one of the other things that you can do in your science classroom is that we all study about space, right? So you can always ask your children to develop a particular mask or something. So this is my astronaut mask. You can ask your children to perhaps even wear different costumes and come to the class in that costume. And you can reward the children who are wearing the best costumes and have the best preparedness for this particular virtual virtual excursion. So build that excitement, make the children prepared, and assign them different roles to do different sort of questions after they have completed the virtual excursion. All right, how many of you would like to just memorize facts? None. How many of you would like to learn those facts through games? A lot of you, okay. So teaching through games is something that we should all involve our children into, because science involves learning a lot of facts. And these facts are some things that you cannot change. They cannot be modified. You cannot make these things up. So they have to be learned the way they are. What you can do is you can gamify that particular set of facts and turn them into different sort of games that children are enjoying during that particular time and during that particular age, which will involve the children in basically thinking that they are basically trying to do a game and they're trying to win the game, but indirectly they are actually learning a lot of facts. So what you can do is, one of the most popular games played in between children of primary school is Uno. It's a card game that you all must be knowing. So what you can do is you can ask the children to develop that game at their homes in which they color code the cards and they put down different sort of definitions of different particular topics and different terms. And for example, if I have a green color card to play, and my green color card is a card that states the definition of atom. So I'm going to throw that card and I have to say the definition out loud. So when I say the definition out loud, everyone else in the game listens to that definition. Then if someone else has to play another green card and the green card is um, uh, in a person's hand and the definition of isotopes is mentioned on that particular green card. So the child plays that card and out loud says the definition of isotopes. So everyone who's playing listens to that definition of isotopes. Similarly, you go on and on. So you color code some of the cards into different colors and you divide them into different colors and then you start throwing them accordingly. Indirectly, your children learn a lot of definitions and a lot of facts this way. Though they are all competing to be the winner, they are indirectly learning, revising, and reinforcing their concepts that have to be revised and reinforced again and again. The other strategy that you can always use in your classrooms, which are virtual, is Jigsaw. Now, Jigsaw is something that we were really passionate about in our face-to-face classrooms. However, technology has advanced and now we have breakout rooms in a lot of different spaces that we use for our virtual classrooms. So MS Teams, the software that you are all using to listen to this presentation and to me, has an option of these breakout rooms as well. So you can always start your class with a home group in which you have all the children together. Then you divide the children into some subgroups and you give them subtopics. They go to their expert groups, read that particular topic, that particular task, come back to their home groups and share their learning with other children. This way you are able to complete a lot of topics in limited time. Also, this makes children really responsible for their own learning, because when you come from an expert group to the home group, you are the only one who actually knows what happened in that expert group. So you have to share. So the child is really involved and engaged in such activities. When learning can be virtual, then doing experiments can also be done virtually. So virtual labs also help children to use simulations and see different sort of experiments in a virtual situation. You can always see how machines work. You can see the section of different animals. You can learn different sorts of concepts through virtual labs. It allows the children to hone their process skills of science and observe, predict, and develop that curiosity of inquiry in the children, so that if the children are missing out on being physically present in a proper science lab, they can actually hone their skills sitting at home by virtually seeing different sorts of phenomena occur and experiments take place in a virtual setup. The second outcome of this session was to have a look at the science process skills. So we have 6 basic skills of science, which are used at the primary level. So the first one is observing. which is followed by classifying. Then we move on to measuring and using numbers, followed by inferring, predicting, and then communicating. Let's have a look at these skills one by one. So the first skill is observing, in which you basically observe things using the five senses. We usually think that observing just means looking and viewing. It is not that, it is beyond that. So in order to observe something, you have to use all your five senses to collect any sort of information regarding that particular object or that phenomena. If you are not a keen observer, you will not be able to develop the skills any further, and it will also hinder your progress at the secondary level. Because when you start experimenting, the first thing that you have to be very good at is how to make observations and how to record those observations. There are times when I have been in the lab during my secondary school years, and when I would mix two chemicals and my teacher would ask, all right, what was the reaction like? And I would say, I don't know, I just was unable to record the observations. And you have to understand that if you will not develop these um, um, skills at the primary level, the children at the secondary level will really lag at this skill and will not be able to progress with further skills to be able to reach up to the level of doing advanced level experiments. So it's very important that we develop the foundations of um, science process skills in the primary years, so that the teachers of the secondary years can then build on the integrated skills, and the children are really uh, very good at these skills and can practice them when they go into the labs in their high school. Classifying is the second skill, in which what you do is you group together different objects or different species of things that have similarities, and you take out the things that are different from each other. Classifying is um, a very important skill. You do it throughout your science lessons from primary to secondary to tertiary levels, in which you can even classify the same sort of group into different categories. For example, if we look at animals, animals can be classified into so many categories. Like if we want to classify animals, we can classify animals by um, the kind of food that they eat. So they can be herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. We can classify animals according to their habitats as well, and a lot of other ways. So classification basically makes it easier for us to group things and understand there's how they are similar to each other. Measuring and using numbers is the third skill, in which you make quantitative observations by using numbers. You have to basically quantify everything when you are dealing with science, because if your quantities are not consistent and are not accurate, then you will never get consistent results. And science is all about accuracy. Now, I'll give you an example of things that our mothers usually do when they're making their favorite biryani. So you will ask your mom that, Mom, you make the world's best biryani. Can you give me your recipe? And they'll say, okay, put a little bit of this and put a little bit of that and put a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And you end up doing the same thing that your mother asked, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And it ends up like something that is not even close to what your mother made. Why did that happen? Because you were not using standardized units, which is why your end result will always vary. So in science, there is no room for these, um, um, you know, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You have to have standardized units in which you have to measure whatever you are doing, and whatever are the standardized units, they have to be used. Otherwise, your observations, your um, experiments will never have consistent results. I'll give you another example. Once I asked a child in school that how much time does it take you to go home, to reach home? And the child said, it takes me close to 3 songs to reach home. And I said, 3 songs? And the child said, yes, the one uncle plays 3 songs, and as soon as the third song is about to end, I am almost home. So I said, but that's not a standard measurement. How much time does it require? So he was like, okay, I never ever bothered to notice the time. So we need to ensure that our children are using the correct standards and the correct units, so that we can develop their skills in using accurate standards. Another thing that the children do is they often use the wrong units for the wrong things. So they'll say, I bought a kilo of milk. Now, volume cannot be measured in kilograms, right? So you have to make sure that you are teaching the right sort of standards to the children, and you are making them correct their standards as well. Inferring is one of the skills in which you use your past experience or your previous knowledge, and through that you make conclusion or you try to explain certain events. So for example, if you see some footprints and you are trying to gauge what that particular thing is, that is basically called inferring. On the other hand, predicting is stating the outcome of a possible future event through some knowledge that you have gained through previous experiences or collected data. So for example, if it's very cloudy today in Karachi, I may have a prediction that it might rain or it may not rain based on some of my previous knowledge, as well as through some of the experiences that we've had. So for example, if my experience has been as such that in Karachi, it hardly ever rains, even though it's really cloudy, then I will predict that it's just going to be very cloudy and it's not going to rain. So whenever you're doing an experiment in science, you have to ensure that you keep asking your children to predict and make a guess that what do you think is going to happen next and why. So this develops your reasoning, and it also develops your in the skill of inquiry. Communicating is very important in science, and initially it was thought that this is a skill which is only limited to the languages. However, now it is part of the basic skills, because it is very important to share knowledge with others, and science is about disseminating and cascading the knowledge that you have acquired. So communicating basically is about sharing whatever information you have, and you can do it through different ways. At the primary school level, you can use different tables, graphs, figures, models. You can do it through presentations or any other medium. Do such sort of activities so that children can learn through each other's experiences, and learn about different things by peer experiences. Our last outcome for the day is to have a look at different assessment strategies for science virtual classrooms. So one of the strategy that I would like to convince you all to do in your classrooms is e-portfolios. Why am I going to convince you all to do e-portfolios is because it is the safest thing to do during times of COVID, because you don't have to mark these papers, and you don't have to take papers and give papers, which is a health hazard at the moment. The other thing is that uh, paper pencil tests do not measure different capabilities and different skills of the students, which are uh, required, and paper pencil tests do not give you the right um, um, data on the child's performance. So one of the things that has been part of um, the assessment strategies that have worked well is student portfolios. And since now, after COVID, predictive grading has come in, and we might see it as a norm for another year or two, it is best to just start doing student portfolios and maintaining those, because in the long run as well, a lot of high schools, universities, colleges have started looking at student portfolios in terms of the fact that they want to see how well a child has been able to um, record their own growth and record their own reflections. So I would recommend that we do away with all the traditional methods for the time that, at least actually for the time that COVID is existing, and let us benefit by putting in a little more extra effort and involving our children in making their own portfolios electronically. And if we do it electronically, we also save a lot of paper and a lot of trees. So it's something that is um, also very environment friendly as well. So I would endorse student portfolios as an assessment strategy in your virtual classrooms. It's easier, it is more tech savvy, and for the time being, it is something that will not put your health at risk at all. So with that, we come to the end of our session. These are the list of references that I have used to develop my presentation. Thank you for attending the session. I will now be taking your questions and comments, which you have been posting in the chat box. Thank you so much for listening.